Hi, this is Julie Johnson, just doing a quick video discussion about your Connect History papers for my online classes in History 111. Some of the things I've been noticing online, and even if you're looking at this video from one of my on-ground classes, just a quick review of sort of what the expectations are for the paper and to guide you toward a really solid connection. So just some ideas to think about, things that we have been reading about in the Foner text. In class, when we discuss motivations in American history, and Foner talks about those 3 Gs, which you all wrote about and have thought about, gold, God, and glory, as a way to remember motivations in history, frankly, world history, but also American history. So in particular for our purposes here, American history, thinking about that idea of why Europeans are engaging in the New World, what their motivations are for exploration, for settlement, and for development of society. If we think about Columbus, Columbus really embodies all 3 of those Gs. He's motivated to spread Christianity. He's motivated to get wealth and resources for the Spanish crown, that idea of glory for Spain, and also, motivated by gold, right? That idea of resource and money for the crown itself. So Columbus really does embody those 3 Gs, but we should also think about those motivations, those human motivations, when we start to see settlements develop by the Europeans who are coming over to engage in the Western Hemisphere. And I really try hard in my class not to say New World, even though the Americas were perceived as a New World by the Europeans. This is a world that existed for centuries, right, prior to European engagement, Columbus's quote-unquote discovery of the New World. So when we start to see Europeans coming over, what are their, and this is a connection you may be interested in, what are their motivations for settlement? What are the pushes in immigration that are pushing Europeans to come to the New World? Maybe starvation, maybe motivations in persecution in their home countries are pushing them to settle in the New World. What are those motivations that we can think about with these European settlers? So some connections I've been reading about have been focusing on immigration, and that's a very solid, very interesting, and I think important, frankly, connection you could think about. This is a picture that we talk about in class that sort of represents that it's idea of overpopulation in England in the early 18th century. So some things to look at in this picture. Overpopulation can create many problems in society, even today. I think we see that in the world we live in today, and that's the idea of this connection. What are we looking at in this really very early American history that connects to our world today? Obviously, we hope that we're not going to ever see a mother sort of tossing her baby over a stairwell out of despair or, frankly, just out of discard, right? She can't. What does this picture tell us? What is this artist trying to represent that's going on in England during this period that may push an immigration or may give motivation to an immigration of Europeans, in this case English citizens, to travel to the New World? If you were living in this society where you're sharing a dog bone with your dog because you are starving, or there is war and fighting and death and plague, would you be motivated to leave your home and travel someplace safer and that has that promise of utopia? So Sir Thomas More writes in the early 1500s a book called Utopia, and that utopia, that idea of a perfect world, if we don't know what the word utopia means this sort of perfect society. That idea of a perfect society really begins to manifest itself in what is perceived as the Americas or this New World. And so you'll see and have read about, I hope, groups of immigrants, settlers who are coming to the New World looking for that utopia, or maybe being pushed from their home society in which they live. And a great example of that would be those Puritans who come over because of religious persecution in England during the Protestant Reformation and all of the different struggles that are going on in Europe during the mid 16th and 17th centuries. So these Puritans who are coming over, what are their motivations for settlement? What are their motivations for migration as immigrants into this new world? And how do those connect maybe to the motivations we see in the world today? Also, it is this society that settles in the Massachusetts Bay Area in the northern part of the British colonies that you are beginning to read about. That will develop a very strong sense, very strong Puritan, right, puritanical, strong religious and social culture. And a very famous speech that by one of the religious leaders in the Massachusetts Bay Colony is a speech by a man named John Winthrop. And it is in this speech that Winthrop will coin a phrase that is used throughout American history. Winthrop says that this Massachusetts Bay, these pilgrims and Puritans that have settled in the northern British colonies, need to present themselves as a city upon a hill. We must always consider that we shall be as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are upon us. And I'd like you to think about maybe the connection there is a question of how is America perceived today? Is America still perceived as this utopian city upon a hill, this ideal that people around the world hope to engage with in some way? Is it a pull or a push, right? A pull, an enticement for people to come to America. That could be a connection you think about as well. So these are just two really quick ideas to sort of go over some of the things you've been reading about, but also guide you into a look at your Connect History paper. Again, this is a history class, so while I really want you to engage the history in a practical way in your world, I'm reading these papers looking for the historical content. So please be very specific with the history. Focus on the history. I don't want to know about what's going on in the world today. I know about that. I really want to see that you can tell me what it is in the history that reminds you, that touches upon the world you live in today. So those human motivations are key. Hopefully this is helpful. If you have any questions, reach out to me as always via email or my office hours on Zoom online. Let me know how I can help, and I will be continuing to sort of parse through your discussions online. Thanks.